Nou, tot zover. Well, good news yesterday. As I told you yesterday morning, we were going to have an agreement, and we got it. Late, as always, but we got it. So now we already have a plan to ban 90% of the oil imports in the European Union. By the end of this year, we will be buying 90% less. Only some exceptions for the landlocked countries. I think it's a reasonable way out of the discussion. You know, this weekend we have been engaging in long and difficult diplomatic discussions with the ministers and the ambassadors, and finally the leaders arranged the last pending issue. So the sixth package has been approved. Not only think on the oil ban, think also on three more important banks out of SWIFT. It will still put more difficulties to the Russian economy in the exchanges with the outer world. So this is another step further, another show of unity. It takes a long time in Europe to discuss and to agree because we require unanimity. But I think that the effort of these last days has been worldwide. And today we will discuss about defense. How to improve the defense capacities of the European Union member states. Because remember that defense is a competence of the member states. And the member states created the European Defense Agency, which I have the honor of chair. And the purpose is to try to look at how do we perform. And certainly we should doing more. But we have to do it all together. If every member state increases its expenditure, each one on their side, increasing by X%, what do they already have? It would be a big waste of money, because we will not correct the duplicities, the duplications that we have. It's the same thing several times. Neither the gaps, something that we don't have, no one of us. So we have to increase our military expenditure in a coordinated manner. And it's not going to be easy, because the army, the defense capabilities is the core of the national sovereignty. And to try to pull all the army development will require a lot of political skill. We present this report. I, as President of the European Defense Agency, and the Commission, who has competences on defense industry, putting together the industry and the army in order to make the European Union stronger in the world, also from a military point of view, because what we have learned from the Ukrainian war is that it's not enough trade, it's not enough the rule of law, it's not enough to be a good civil power. We need to be also a military power.
Mr. Borrell, experts say that the agreement reached yesterday is not really effective because the crude oil that is transported by sea can easily be sold elsewhere by Russia. How are you sure that the sanctions are actually weakening Putin?
Certainly, we cannot prevent Russia to sell their oil to someone else. We are not so powerful, but we are the most important client for Russia. They will have to look for another one, and certainly they will have to decrease the price. The purpose is for the Russians to get less resources, less financial resources to feed in the war machine, and this certainly will happen.
Do you see all member states are contributing to the same level in this oil embargo?
According with their capacities. According with their capacities and circumstances. Yes.
Is Patriarch Kirill in the sanctions list? Can you confirm this?
Listing?
Patriarch Kirill is in the sanctions list. Can you confirm this?
Who is it? The Patriarch.
Yes. Russia's
The Patriarch. I think so.
You think so?
Well, a week ago I would have said yes.
I want to ask you about the candidate status for three countries, Ukraine, Moldova, and Georgia. What's the perspective of these three countries? You will discuss this issue the next time.
Yes, they were discussing about it, but let the Commission do their work.
When we will see your assessment?
Suppose on the June Council. Okay, thank you.
satisfied with the agreement yesterday?
I think the important news is that the European Union is still united in its purpose. The purpose is to stop Russia's aggressive war in Ukraine. We have two tools with which to do that. One is to support Ukraine militarily, economically, and the second is through the isolation of Putin's economy via sanctions. And yesterday we agreed on the sixth sanction round, which includes oil. It will cut about 2/3 of Russia's oil exports to the EU, which means 2/3 of the monies that we send to Russia will no longer be sent. And this is very, very good news indeed. The stronger the sanctions, the quicker the war will end.
But as a representative,
once again, I have argued from February 24th that we need immediate and full energy sanctions, oil, coal and gas. We move as quickly as we can move all together. The important thing is that we are all together, we are all united. I think it's a fantastic step in the right direction to make it ever more difficult for Russia to fund this war of aggression in Ukraine. Well, all member states are determined to move away from Russian energy dependency. Over the past 20, 30 years, nations have built infrastructure which has been greatly reliant upon Russian energy sources, and we're moving very rapidly away from that. For some member states it's a little easier. For other member states it is actually physically more difficult because lack of ports, lack of infrastructure. But everyone is moving in the same direction.
as a representative of a Baltic country, do you feel reassured that actually economic reasons seem to take over and not necessarily the fight against Putin?
I see that we still, 3 months after the start of the war, we have gone sanction after sanction after sanction, ever tighter, notwithstanding the fact that the sanctions also negatively affect us as European Union member states. We're still determined to stop the flows of money to Moscow, and the unity is there. Thank you very much.
So after lengthy discussions yesterday, we finally reached an agreement, and I was positively surprised because when we went into the room, the signs were not that great, but everybody was very constructive, and I'm happy that we reached the agreement. But of course, we also have to discuss already the 7th package, because things are not going any better in Ukraine, and as long as the war is going on. There is no peace. Ukraine hasn't won the war. We haven't done enough. And of course, we talked about pushing Ukraine for peace. That there are signs that peace could be the ultimate goal. But we had very intense discussions about this, and it's only up to the Ukrainians to say what kind of peace they are able to live with, and also we have to give them all the military support so that they can defend themselves, because the peace can't be the ultimate goal. Even if there's peace, the atrocities for those territories that are conquered will continue. So if we want to end the human suffering, we also have to push the aggressor back to its borders. Thank you.
Will you discuss the gas embargo today?
Not today, no. We discussed it briefly already yesterday, but gas is, of course, much more difficult than oil already was. All the next sanctions will be more difficult because so far they have only hurt Russians, but now they're also having effects on Europeans, and that's why it's much more politically difficult to decide those things. So we will not discuss gas today. We will discuss repower and energy issues. We will discuss defense and, of course, the food security as well, which is very much connected to the war in Ukraine. I think that the gas has to be in the 7th package, but I'm realistic as well. I don't think it will be there.
I think the time is running out. I mean, Gazprom is now stopping deliveries also to the Netherlands. It's just a matter of time until there will be no more gas deliveries. Maybe it's better for the EU to take the first step.
Yes, what we are doing, we are focusing on getting additional gas supplies, and also yesterday evening we talked about the Repower EU, how to get the necessary energy for European Union, for different countries have different problems. But the worry, of course, with the gas is that Russia is switching off not only Netherlands but also Denmark. And maybe this will go so that the Russians will put the sanctions on gas.
Today, are you going to discuss defense as a NATO country to Russia? What do you expect as Estonia from this discussion?
I expect the unity and also the decisiveness on doing things together. What I mean by this is that there are military capabilities, big and expensive military capabilities that no single country alone can do. And now that all the countries have said that they will increase their defense expenditure to 2%, then the question is for what it is really spent for. And I think, for example, the air defense covering a larger area is something that we can do together, procure together. I expect this discussion to be not so much, regarding the national interest, but the European interests as a whole in regards to defense. Okay. It's a compromise. So if I had to choose between, a compromise or no sanctions at all, then I think it's a fair compromise. And I must say that everybody was very constructive around the table trying to find the solutions. So I think this was the best we could get. And as I said yesterday, I was very skeptical that we will reach an agreement. So that's a positive thing that we did. Okay, thank you.
Morgen. Bis in die Nacht ist verhandelt worden. Hauptthema natürlich der Russland-Ukraine-Konflikt. Die Sitzung war auch geprägt von den Telefonaten, die geführt worden sind mit Präsident Putin. Olaf Scholz, Emmanuel Macron und ich haben über unsere Eindrücke informiert, all das, was da besprochen worden ist und was es für Möglichkeiten gibt in Fragen der Konfliktlösung. Darüber hinaus dann der Beschluss des Ölembargos, eine Maßnahme, die mit Sicherheit auch für die Mitgliedstaaten an sich schmerzhaft sein wird. Aber man muss realistisch sein, die Schmerzen, die wir erleiden, sind nichts im Vergleich dazu, die die ukrainische Bevölkerung zu erleiden hat. Heute das nächstwichtige Thema, die Ernährungsversorgungssicherheit. Wir werden heute mit dem Präsidenten der Afrikanischen Union diskutieren. In vielerlei Hinsicht heikel. Auf der einen Seite, weil Nordafrika bedroht ist, wenn die Exporte aus der Ukraine nicht stattfinden, in der Frage der Ernährungssicherheit. Und auf der anderen Seite, weil die Afrikanische Union sich neutral verhält in der Frage der Verurteilung des Konflikts, der Aggression der Russischen Föderation gegen die Ukraine. Und darüber hinaus wird heute auch das Thema Verteidigung ein wichtiges sein. Das heißt, wir werden uns stärker abstimmen in der Europäischen Union. Mit der gemeinsamen Außen- und Sicherheitspolitik ist die Europäische Union auch ein Sicherheitspartner. Wir sorgen in Friedensmissionen, sei es in Mali oder in Unterstützung auch der NATO innerhalb des Kosovos, für Frieden auf der Welt. Und jetzt geht es auch um die Frage der Aufrüstung der europäischen Staaten. Auch Österreich hat ja beschlossen, sein Verteidigungsbudget zu erhöhen. Und das alles jetzt in einen Einklang zu bringen und auch europäisch abzustimmen, das werden heute die Themen sein.
Die internationale Presse sagt, Viktor Orban hat fast alle seine Forderungen durchbekommen, der Kompromisse ist einer, den man bieten kann. Stimmt das positiv, wenn Gas zum Beispiel im Südverkehr auf der Tagesordnung steht, dass das auch für Österreich ein Beispiel ist, dass man Rücksicht nimmt auf Staaten?
Es war gestern schon ganz klar und ich sage es auch heute wieder, es wird das Gasembargo kein Thema sein. Es hat auch Olaf Scholz klargestellt. Gas verhält sich ganz anders in der Frage der Versorgungssicherheit aus Öl. Man kann Öl viel leichter kompensieren, wenn man auf russisches Öl verzichtet. Da gibt es dann technische Probleme, die wurden gelöst mit Viktor Orban. Bei Gas verhält es sich ganz anders. Daher wird Gasembargo oder das Gasembargo auch bei einem nächsten Sanktionspaket kein Thema sein.
Viktor Orban hat gestern gesagt, dass er nicht sehr optimistisch ist und im Vorfeld alles ist funktioniert. Woran ist es dann gelegen, wenn es dann auch so gut ausgegangen ist?
Es ging hier um technische Detailfragen. Russisches Erdöl bedeutet auch eine besondere Form der Art, es zu raffinieren. Das ist eine technische Voraussetzung auch in Ungarn oder auch in anderen Ländern wie zum Beispiel Tschechien. Tschechien war bedroht davon, dass 30% seiner Dieselbestände plötzlich nicht mehr vorhanden wären, die es aber täglich braucht. Das heißt, hier gab es Kompromisslösungen, die sind gefunden worden. Und bis man halt einen Kompromiss findet, kann es auch ein wenig dauern. Und wenn man genau hinschaut, wir waren früher fertig als bei manchen anderen Räten.
Eine letzte Frage jetzt. Die Niederlande kriegen auch den Gas aus Russland. Wie groß ist die Sorge, dass sich das weiter ausweitet und mehr Länder auf diese nicht kein Gas mehr bekommen?
Das liegt daran, dass diese Länder nicht auf die Zahlungsbedingungen von Gazprom eingegangen sind. Die OMV hat hier gute Gespräche und konstruktive Gespräche geführt mit Gazprom. Wir haben den gleichen Druck nachher. Wir füllen unsere auch Speicher weiter auf. Das ist notwendig, um für den Winter vorzusorgen. Das heißt, ich mache mir hier derzeit keine Sorgen.
Wir beobachten einen Preisanstieg.
Dankeschön.
Please, very please.
Good morning, Taoiseach. How are you? Good morning, Taoiseach.
Are you all keeping?
Your reaction to last night?
Well, very pleased last evening that the decision was taken. It's a significant decision in terms of the banning of the importation of Russian oil into the European Union, and really accounting for a very significant volume of Russian oil, and that will hit Russia. And I think clearly, there were significant challenges for some member states which had to be taken into account, given their dependency. I think there was since the beginning of this war, the actions of Vladimir Putin has united Europe more than ever before. And I was always struck at the first round of sanctions at the unanimity and the quickness of that unanimity, and that's following through. Now we're at the sixth round of sanctions, which, as you go from round to round, it becomes more challenging, and oil and gas are particularly challenging given the dependency on Russian oil and gas of some member states. What is very clear, though, is that we are at a watershed moment in terms of the European Union's dependency on Russian oil and gas, because side by side with the sanctions package last evening, we began discussions on the energy package, the REPower EU, which is looking really to a more sustained and fundamental break in that dependency on Russian gas and oil. And if you dovetail that with our climate change agenda, it is a watershed moment in terms of fossil fuels in general, which will make for fairly rocky territory over the next number of years in terms of pricing around fossil fuels. We cannot get away from that. But on the other hand, what's clear from the presentation from the President of the Commission is that there's a need to double down on renewables, and a lot of focus from the Commission now on the permitting systems within member states, including our own, in terms of renewable energy, and the need to get offshore wind projects in place much sooner than would have been the anticipated timeline for offshore wind energy projects. So that's something that in the round is a significant issue. But last evening was good to get unanimity again on this question, to get agreement, and people worked hard to do that.
You spoke about rocky times ahead, Taoiseach. Does this mean that we've seen made permanent now high prices for diesel and petrol at the pumps for the foreseeable future? And what does that mean in terms of knock-on inflation?
Well, I think what I mean, Rocky, might be the best choice of words, but yeah, one is looking at a different era now in terms of pricing around fossil fuels. The war has really exacerbated this and created huge pressure. And there's no doubt in my mind that part of Putin's strategy was to create an energy crisis and also then to create a food crisis. And that will be discussed now this morning. There's really concern. We're meeting with the President of the African Union, Macky Sall, will speak to the meeting this morning. There's real concern if you combine the impact of the war with drought in the Horn of Africa. We are facing into very challenging times around food security and famine across the Middle East and Africa. And that is an issue that is of huge concern in many member states, and in terms of the situation in Africa and indeed the Middle East. And that it's a big concern. There's a lot of discussion last evening around how we can get grain out of Ukraine, and different routes being suggested. But it's all very, very difficult, and a very significant humanitarian crisis still awaits us in respect of the food dimension, and the war has really made that much, much worse.
And what is your message to Irish consumers now that they have to get used to high prices and maybe do their best to use less?
Well, I think we're going to work very hard to create alternative forms of energy, obviously, in the renewable piece. We've done well in Ireland in terms of electricity on renewables, but we've got to move much faster now to the end of this decade. We will do everything we can to alleviate the pressures on consumers. But if you look at the EU Power initiative and communication, it's very, very clear that if you reduce permanently Europe's dependence on Russian gas and oil, that has implications for the global market over time. Now, look, there will be a lot of experts analysing that. There will be a lot of shifts in that over the next number of years. But it will be challenging. There's no point in saying anything other than that it will be challenging.
Can consumers look forward to any further help from the government before the budget, or is that something that they will have to wait?
It will be at the budget, and I think also I'm very mindful of the fiscal reports, the Fiscal Council's report this morning. And as I have said, we have initiated exploratory discussions with the social partners around what's collectively the best way as a country to respond to this unique and very challenging set of circumstances, which has created very difficult cost of living issues for people on the ground, and we acknowledge that. So I think we have to be really strategic in terms of how we respond to that, and that's why we've commenced these exploratory talks with unions around pay, but also around other measures in terms of services and how we can, around childcare, education, health and housing in particular, that we can arrive at an agreement that doesn't make the situation worse from an inflationary point of view.
Some record profits generated by electricity companies last year, and we've seen the British impose a windfall tax. The Taoiseach said the government would keep an eye on that. Does that now come into the equation in terms of the budget?
Our situation is somewhat different to the UK's, and we will assess that in the round and what makes sense overall in terms of a sustainable market for us in Ireland. We import a lot of fossil fuels. We're not exactly masters of our own destiny in that regard. I think the most important thing we can do as a country is to double down on renewables and really get moving on the timelines around offshore wind. That's the big game changer for Ireland over the next decade, no doubt about that, because that ultimately, by the mid-2030s, would enable Ireland to become an exporter as opposed to a chronic importer of fossil fuels at the moment. Thank you very much indeed. Thanks.
Gracias.